Hey, welcome to this episode of The Complete Advisor. I am so happy that you're here. This is an awesome extension of a series, Josh, that we've been doing. Joshua.
Josh is great today.
Okay,
Perfect.
we're less formal than we were in the other
That's
studio.
right.
We still got the ties on though.
I know. Should we take him off?
No, keep on.
Okay.
I mean, how often does one? Well, I don't get to wear a tie very often, so this is actually kind of a treat. But so we're here today on this episode of The Complete Advisor. We're rolling up our sleeves literally. If you're not seeing us on video, I'm literally rolling up my sleeves. But one of the things that is a question that a lot of advisors have is always the question about, should I consider doing dinner seminars? And one of the series that we've been exploring here on the show is how having a conversation with a top advisor, like literally, how are you doing your seminar? We're not going to talk about what's up on the screen behind you,
Right.
but like, what are you talking about? So we are joined today, very successful advisor, young, fresh face, out of Florida, Josh Storey, Candor Wealth, out of Sarasota, which is a beautiful place. I mentioned over there, I took my family down there to, I shouldn't say the name, because it's this little strip island that there's like next to nothing on there. It's called Englewood.
Englewood, absolutely.
Is unbelievable. So if you're ever looking for a place to take your family that's not like way over like commercialized, that place was awesome. Amazing. Anyway, I digress. So Florida could not be a hotter spot when you think of for retirees. I mean, that's where people go. That's where they snowbird. So you've got this environment. You've got all these retirees down there. You're doing dinner seminars.
Yes.
And first, though, I'll get your bona fides out of the way so
Sure.
everybody knows. So here's what I know about you, Josh. So successful practice, Sarasota, Florida. Office up in Michigan, which we'll have to explore again why. Were you originally from Michigan? That's right, isn't it?
I was born in Toronto myself, and then I moved down to Florida when I was about 5. So I just have a good partner up there in Kalamazoo.
Were you a big fan of Snow?
Huge
The
fan
rapper?
of Snow.
No. Okay, I digress. Look that one up. He had the weirdest song back in the day. White guy from Toronto who rapped in a Jamaican accent. It was crazy.
I gotta say I missed that one, so I'll have to look him up later.
His accent was so bad. This is back when MTV used to play music. This is the 90s, so I'm dating myself. They actually had to put captioning on the bottom because no one could tell what this kid was saying. Okay, I digress. You've got an office up in Michigan. We've got the office down in Florida.
Yes.
Successful practice. You're taking in AUM. You're full service down there. Been in business for probably, I want to say, about 2 decades. Sound about right?
Not quite that long.
Not quite?
I got licensed, man. I was, about 10 years ago.
Okay, I was trying to make myself feel better about my age, Josh. You just kind of poked a hole in that.
Yeah, apologies.
No, that's okay. I'm just getting old. Okay, so you're doing dinner seminars.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm always fascinated is about how people make their decisions and how they get to where they're getting here with this, and how they're doing it. So let's talk about your seminars, and let's start first off with you're feeding them?
Oh, yeah. So we make sure that, just normal setup is going to be, we usually start at 6 o'clock. We find it a good time for retirees in Florida anyways. We do essentially an hour presentation, 50 minutes. We never want it to go really any longer than that. And then we get them to dinner. So 8 o'clock, we're pretty much all set.
Wrapped up. Okay, so we're going to back it up now.
Yeah.
We're going to unpack every bit of that. Let's start with the location.
Mm-hmm.
How did you pick your location? Because you've got a ton of choices down there.
So good food is always a good starting point, but
Nice.
I would say it doesn't have to be expensive necessarily. So find a popular spot that got to have the private room.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure that they're set up for what you're trying to accomplish at the dinner seminar, which is 50 minutes of eyeballs on you and being able to sell yourself and sell your company at the dinner.
How did you pick your spot though?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, so that goes back to my wife and I met at that restaurant
Nice.
or a chain of it. So I'd worked there myself in the past. We knew it was good food. They were open on the private room and availability for us and what we were trying to do, and well priced, popular. So that's kind of summed it up.
Were they willing to? Did you look for a place that does I'm going to say it wrong, but like a limited menu where we craft your own menu, or
Yeah, so they usually did. What we do right now there is, a steak option, a seafood option, and then a chicken option. So that sounds very simple, but
Yeah.
they've got some great dishes for each of those. But that way you're covering everybody. Everyone's included there. Sometimes I've gone to seafood places in the past, and it's a little bit more, it's a limited menu, but there's less choices for everybody as well.
I think you have to cover that. No disrespect to my father-in-law, but he is one picky eater. I may have called him a baby in the past, but it's like super, super picky. So you do have to have those basic options.
Yeah.
What about, you mentioned it's a chain, so how did you pick the location, the exact one? Because it sounds like you have a couple choices. Was it parking situation, easy to get off the off-ramp, or?
Parking's perfectly fine. You always want to make sure that there's a venue with that availability. But I would say for us, it was a new area in Sarasota, UTC Mall and University Town Center area. There's a lot being added there. So they were a restaurant that's just tucked in there, and that's a popular place in Sarasota. We felt that anybody in Sarasota, there's Lakewood Ranch or Bradenton, the surrounding areas, would be willing to come in and drive, even if it's a little bit further, if it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, something like that.
What's the traffic situation like down there? I know everyone has rotten traffic. What does your guys look like?
So I found numbers that 15 new people were moving to Sarasota on average.
God, that's crazy.
So traffic's definitely increasing. And then there definitely construction from that to fix those longer term, but in the short term of that, it can be tough. So. But people are moving there. They're expecting a little bit of traffic if that's the time. But usually we're doing, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, middle of the week. So if there's a time that it's less, that's usually when it is.
I guess it just popped into my head. I know that there's seasonality to everything, and you guys we get hot here in Kansas City. You guys get hot as all get out, and people, the whole point of being a snowbird is you're avoiding those extreme temperatures. So summers get kind of quiet on the seminar side. Is it what's ideal for you?
Yeah, summers are always going to slow down, or we'll still run some events, but if we're doing them ever less frequently in the marketing plan, summer's going to be always quieter. And then we're going to have some, during the season or our winter months for sure, spring months, we're going to have a lot more people there. We're going to have people that are, snowbirds or only down here part of the time as well. So bigger audience for sure.
Do you have with snowbirds? Do you have the situation of I hate the term for people that come to seminars and just want to eat. But do you think you run into that more in Florida because they have their person back home, or?
So I'm not sure if it's different than up north. I'm not positive on that. But what I would say is that we're always looking at, there's going to be a group of people that, yes, they came for the food 100%. There's also people that are going to come and they're there for the information really across the board. So we got to take the good with the bad.
This is true.
And then we always want to do a good enough presentation and be kind enough and, service those people enough that if we can turn some of the people that just came for the food into booking appointments with us, then it's a win.
What about, do you stick with the same location or do you bounce around the city?
We have to bounce around a little bit. So we do about, once a month as far as our different venues. So we've got our favorite venues that we'll go there almost every other month. Sometimes we got to take a break out of season and that kind of thing. But yeah, we'll bounce around to a couple different venues.
So when you were looking, so you looked for a place that, one, you wanted the food, you wanted you needed that private room. Do you use, how important is tech? Do you use their tech or do you use yours? And by tech, I mean like a screen, or I guess, does anyone use a projector anymore, or do they have a big screen TV?
So when I first started doing seminars and years ago, I had a projector and I'd lug everything. And so at this point, yes, the tech I would say is better. The Roku can stream the PowerPoint or whatever you're doing. So yes, we try and find locations or venues with that stuff built in, but it's pretty easy.
Well, what about, so let's talk about the actual layout. Is it set up as rounds or classroom style? And do you have a preference?
So I like the classroom style, but It is preference. I mean, different venues or different rooms can adjust a little bit. So we've done a U shape around the room. So
How'd you like
everybody-
that? How do you? That's a different design.
Yes. So that was actually a place just a little bit further south that we did. But great little steakhouse, and it's a little bit of a bigger room, so we can make that. But it's different, right? So then my presentation, I was kind of
Yeah.
inside of the U a little bit. So I always want to try and be fluid and
Did
move
they?
around.
So everyone on the U, everyone was sitting on the outside of it.
Yes.
And
so,
then what? So what did they do when they eat? When it was time to eat, did somebody switch sides, or they just everyone was?
everybody was side, and it was one of those things that we kind of tested out.
What'd you think?
I honestly I liked it. It worked great for presentation, and I don't think anybody felt awkward being beside each other than not. So
Yeah.
we might try it again.
What are you a move around the room kind of guy, or do you tend to stay put?
I definitely do some movement. I'm not going all over the room, but I definitely got some movement to the presenting. So, like I said, that one was a little bit different. Usually I'm kind of back and forth slowly up front. But, yeah, a little bit of movement is always good. You don't want to be a pole up there and not move around, right?
Yeah, yeah. Do the U shape is interesting. I've done one or two presentations like that, not a dinner seminar, but with clients where it was like that. You don't run into that very often, though.
No, and I will say that's new for us. So I don't know if I've got other advisors that they would say, nope, that's never going to go that way. But the classroom style is always a winner. But that worked for us when we did it. So we will try it again.
That's interesting. We'll have to. You're the first person I think I've had about 5 or 6 people on talking just about dinner seminars, and I think that's the first time we bumped into someone doing the U shape.
Yeah. Now you have to have a bigger room, so it depends on the venue, right? Because it takes up more space.
Yeah.
Yep. So I would say that's maybe not always a go-to, but if they've got the space, and sometimes a bigger room, you're trying to kind of fill up the space as well.
That's a good point, because you go into it. I've always felt like I'd rather be in a situation where the room seems a little bit crowded, because then it's that versus being in some cavern where the room can swallow. You could have 200 people and it looks like the place is empty.
Exactly. If it feels like you're in the corner of a giant ballroom, that's
bad.
Doesn't work.
Yeah.
Either,
so let's. So you've picked the place.
Yes.
Let's back up just a smooch. So what are you doing? So you've done your marketing to get people there.
Yes.
Whatever mechanic you're using, a mechanism you're using, whether that's Facebook, whether that's direct mail, whether that's email, text, Twitter, all the choices, right? So it's day of, and what is the day of look like for Josh Storey? What are you doing?
Yeah. So I'm always now at this point, I'm willing to take appointments in the middle of the day or the morning, I would say. But the afternoon starts really focusing on the seminar. So it doesn't matter how many times I've done the same presentation. We want to always kind of just look through everything, just put it in your head.
Yep.
And it is a little bit of a relaxation or reset mode. We want to make sure that we know who's coming. We look at our marketing lists and our registered lists. And then we use Creative One on our marketing side to really handle all of that on the back. So when we are showing up to the event, I don't have to worry about calling people or trying to figure out who's coming or who's not. That's all set for us. So
do you guys ever do? I was thinking about this from a conversation with somebody else where any Facebook stalking ever? You're like looking through the names and you're like, oh, I might recognize that, or I think that would be, although it would be kind of hard to make sure that you're pulling up the right Josh Storey, because, God forbid you're like, oh, you go down one rabbit hole, but it would be interesting to, maybe it would put thoughts in your head, but if you had some time, but I mean, there's only so much time in a day, but to do a little Facebook stalking.
So I can't say I've never done it. Okay. But honestly, so we want to make sure that we're going into the events with literally, I don't want to make any assumptions, judgments on anybody. Absolute blank slate. Everybody is hopefully there for the right reasons. But yeah, no prejudgments. So, nope, we don't look anybody up. We just have them come in and treat them the same as anybody else.
You know, the flip side on that is if you did look people up on Facebook, since most people only put out the first date impression of themselves,
Right.
Which I've told my wife a couple times. It's like, listen, we know them. It's like, oh, look, the so-and-sos are in Hawaii again. Like, I know them. I know how much they make. I don't know how. That must be on the credit card. Or, it's like, it's the bright, shiny people thing, and you don't see the real world anyway.
Yeah.
And especially, I've been thinking about this topic. You might even run into the situation if you did that kind of stuff of like looking too much, is maybe finding someone that's house poor.
Mm-hmm.
They've got that beautiful house. It's like that's where all the money is. They're like one payment away from not being in there.
Yep.
Question for you. So we get there. It's day of. You've relaxed. Event starts at 6.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got. Do you do how early do you get to the event, first off? How early are you there?
Usually it's about an hour, so 45 minutes to an hour. And I would just say if it's the same venue, that's typically plenty of time.
Mm-hmm.
So we just make sure we've got the setup. If it's the same setup, then it's easy to do. If it's a new venue or a new room, I would suggest a solid hour and a half just to get there. You can do your prep, with a drink in your hand if you need to, but get the room set up, make sure everything is good to go.
Because you never know. That's one thing I always, especially with tech, if there's any issue, you can solve just about anything if you got time.
Absolutely.
But if it gets tight, then especially with tech, there's this weird phenomena of the mixture of the anxiety of public speaking that most people have, plus most of us are not IT people, so you add those together and you get, like, I've seen people just panic.
Yes.
And it's like, just take a breath, it'll all be okay.
And like we said, that's maybe the worst thing to do right before we're doing a speaking event. So we want to go in there prepared and relaxed. Absolutely.
So you get there. Are you doing, well, first of all, are you rolling solo or do you have somebody with you?
I always have my managing partner, Anthony Nicosia. Right now my wife's doing kind of the registrations or logging people in and
Nice.
Handing out folders. I even brought my son to one of the last ones. It was a smaller event, so he's 7 years old. He was, asking what Dad does, so we tried that out. That was ended up being kind of a cute little thing that people appreciated.
So you said registration registration. Do you guys? I imagine you set up a table because it'd be awkward for someone to be standing.
Yep.
But so you've got the registration table. Are you able to put that inside the room? Is it outside the room? What do you prefer?
So
ideally.
Yep, we want it right inside of that room. We have a marketing banner, so I would spend a couple dollars on some of the other marketing things.
One of those travel things. If you're just listening, I'm doing the hand gesture of like rolling up one of those cool banners you can get.
Yes, and I would say I don't want my face giant. I just want it to be Candor Wealth so that people can find where they're going, nice and simple. And then we just set up a table in the room. We hand out branded folders, a little bit about us. Big piece for us in the folders is the response sheets. So that's maybe the best way that we can get appointments, have people have kind of a working document throughout.
All right, we're going to come back to that. So when they come in and they're being greeted by the table, did you say name tags?
No name tags.
No name tags?
Nope.
Interesting. So you're not calling on people you can't call them by name?
Nope.
Why'd you decide to do that?
So number one, it can be cumbersome to say the least, right? We're printing off everybody's names, or you get a name wrong, and then they're more upset that they got the name wrong than something else. So I don't have to call on people specifically. I can look at somebody and or I do very simple general questions when I'm looking for that participation. You're
not pointing and saying, "Hey, you."
I don't. And
you in the orange shirt.
I have in the past, right? So.
Well, that's it. So that's interesting. That is something that's a little different. I've talked to advisors that do that and then that don't. That's interesting. That gives a little different style to how you're doing it. So let's go back to the folders then. So they're coming in, they're getting the folder, and you said that it's got what I guess what I would refer to as like a prestige piece on Candor, talking about you guys, your bona fides, and then. You said that there's a document for them to work through, almost like a worksheet while you're presenting. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. So the idea is that somebody has what we refer to as a response sheet. It's their name, it's their contact information, it's who they came with. So nothing, too far in the weeds, but we also ask things along there. What's your risk? Aggressive, conservative, moderate? What's your tax bracket that you're in? So just kind of starting to paint a picture of who they are. And we just have a big list of things that's saying, I want to increase income in retirement, or I want to make sure I don't run out of money, or I need to understand how much risk I'm taking or fees I'm paying. So there's just a list about 12 things that people can check off as we are talking through the event.
Does it correspond to something that's up on to a section of while you're talking, so it matches up so that it keeps them engaged?
Yes. So, there's basically 3 different points, or, again, it's flexible, but that I'm referring back to that document. I give them a note sheet as well, so that I've learned the hard way on that one, where somebody put a bunch of notes on the response sheet, and at the end of the night, they're like, I'm keeping this. I don't want to give this. So we gave them a note sheet, and I kind of specify, we're going to look at picking this up. We want to know who you are. Note sheet, you can keep it forever.
I'm always fascinated when I've done presentations if someone's left a note sheet behind. It's like a look inside someone's psyche,
Sure.
But it's like, what were they taking notes of and why?
Exactly.
So does that sheet have a spot for appointments, for them to
100.
select an appointment?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So my closing on the seminar is basically the bottom of that response sheet, and there is Monday through Friday check boxes. There's morning, afternoon, evening check boxes, and then there's virtual, home office, or office visit.
Yeah.
Excuse me, not home office. In-home for
In-home,
the client, and then office visit.
How often, what do you think percentage-wise that works out to be between those 3 choices? Out of curiosity. I'm totally putting you on the spot.
No. That's no problem. We always kind of push the office overall.
Yeah.
If it's just further away or whatever the case, we will do in-home visits. So again, we try and keep a very open mind, and nobody wants to waste time driving or that kind of thing. But I think there's a authentication and an ease for people to respect that.
Yeah. Probably not selected that often though, right?
No, people stick to the virtual or the office.
I would think so. Okay, so we're going to come back to that sheet though in a little bit.
Sure.
Registration table's open. It's go time. It's registration is open. People are coming in. Where are you?
So I always make sure everything's set up, everything's good, and then I let my wife Grace and my managing partner Anthony, they kind of have the room. I go to a corner table that's not being used, or the very edge of the bar. I review my notes again, just put them in my head. Even if I've done it the same presentation many times, it's just kind of realigning and putting it in order.
Yep.
So I just kind of relax until about that 6 o'clock time, make sure orders are taken, and get it started.
So you've kind of put yourself off in the corner and you're kind of in the green room if there was a green room.
Exactly.
I like that. So that's interesting because I've had folks that if you're listening to this, and this is the first episode of the dinner seminar series, we've had advisors that I've talked to one where they stand basically at the front of the room and just kind of hang out there. I've talked to somebody else that likes to make small talk with the people. I've talked to another couple that like to be up at the registration table, and some others that like to just kind of come in like the featured performer and not even be visible. Like, just come in and like at 6 o'clock.
Yep.
Here's Johnny. Okay, so we're getting to go time, right? It's time to start. Are you an exact on time guy? Do you let people work their way in a little bit? What do you do?
I have to say, we're very relaxed, I guess, on the seminars overall. So maybe no name tags or not starting exactly at 6 o'clock. I want to make sure everybody gets in, they get comfortable. Somebody comes in at 6:02, I'm going to let them in. I'm going to let the server go. If it's getting past, if it's 6:10 or something like that, I'll just say, hey, we're going to take orders in a moment. We're going to get started quickly or shortly. But I want to make sure everybody's in, settled, and comfortable with drinks and time to order and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's when it's time to start. Are you in a room to where you use a microphone no audio, you just natural voice, or?
I like choosing rooms that don't have to have the microphone or the audio. I don't want to say it's, potentially one more thing that can change or go wrong.
That's a good point, though.
Okay. But if we can find a room where I can speak a little bit loudly at the front, everybody can hear me. We know certain venues that there's no problem. If it's something new, I will just kind of say, can everybody hear me in the back? Do I need to be any louder? So typically not using microphones.
That's interesting. So all these decisions, what I love having these conversations is every one of these decisions is you're making these decisions on setting the stage. Even like the name tags, like the no name tags, there is a total pro and there's a little bit of a con there, but there's a total, I can totally see the pro here of comfort, and it fits you, but it also lets the audience be, a little feel like they're not on spotlight, if you will. I'm not finding the right word there, but okay. So it's go time. And you get started. What do you do as you're looking out? You're presenting. You've started. How do you get people? Do you have any tricks? Any Josh Storey trademarked tactics for? I need to get them engaged. I'm not hitting them. Or what are you looking for to make sure you've got that engagement?
So I always make sure when we're, starting the presentation, and then another little different thing is I don't have anybody introduce me. I just kind of get started and introduce myself and roll through it. So even though I'm kind of off or prepping or that kind of thing, I'm not trying to come in as the star presenter or anything like that. We want it to be relaxed. But when we're going through presentation and kind of looking for that engagement, it's little jokes or little puns always works well. So I kind of go show of hands, who here is planning for retirement or living in retirement. And then ideally you get everybody's hands to go up, and I go, okay, we're making sure we're in the right place. Okay. And then it's just continuing on. So little puns, little jokes throughout, getting that kind of participation, either it's hand raised or answering a simple question.
Do you do any heat checks along the way? If you ever if you feel like you're not hitting home, what do you like to do to get them back in there if you feel like you're losing them?
It may not be the best thing in the world, I guess, but it works always for me. Where if I feel like I've been talking for a long time or I need some engagement, I'm gonna get to an end of a point and go, does that make sense to everybody? And just look around the room and get that. The eyes back on me, or get people to verbalize. So those are just little things that, kind of resets the engagement piece.
What are there things that you, as you're standing up there, that you like to see and you're just like, okay, I got them?
So there's always going to be different levels, right? Where you're looking around the room and, but yeah, people that are got their eyes on you, they're nodding their head. So we talk a lot. Taxes is going to be a big piece. So we're very education focused, where I feel like if I'm getting people good information and they're nodding and agreeing, couldn't be better than that.
All right, let's talk pet peeve for a second.
Okay.
You're standing up there. What's one thing when you're doing seminars and you're speaking that you hate?
So
audience behavior.
If I had to pick one, so sometimes it's if someone's coming and they're there for the food, but they're also there for the drinks sometimes. Okay?
Yeah.
So, and it's just, but sometimes people are very engaged or can be talking over you almost at a certain point. So, but we don't serve any alcohol at the events. Not that people can't help themselves by all means, but if I had one pet peeve, that's probably constant interruptions or even if they're kind of agreeing with what we're saying, but it's tough. It's tough. You got to stay focused and not try and call that person out, but see if they can calm down a little bit.
Have you had to handle somebody that was because when you think about it, you're an advisor. You've spent money. You've not, and it's not just the meal cost-wise, but it's everything that goes into that event. And the last thing you want is some jackass, being a jackass. So have you had to deal with that, and what do you do?
Yes. So I can't say I've ever had to remove someone from an event or anything.
Twist their arm
thank
and throw them
goodness.
out.
Yeah, exactly. But I kind of make them the focus then of my questions. Okay, so and if it's really getting loud or anything where I'm talking, sometimes I'll go back to them and go, "Did you have a question about that?" And even though it breaks it up a little bit, I
Yeah.
keep kind of throwing it at them where hopefully they're taking that as a indicator that okay, I'm talking while he's talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you get back anything that you do to make sure you get back in your mojo so that that person's that annoyance, that disruption doesn't mess up your flow, your mojo?
Yeah. So sometimes I would say it's just keep going. And I know that sounds interesting, but if you got to kind of call out that person and pause for a second, but I would say if it's manageable enough, if he's not, sometimes it's bothering other people, so then you got to kind of call that person out. But there's lots of things in the event, not just people, but our last one, we were in Sarasota, Florida. We had a thunderstorm that there was, telling you, it was lightning on top of the building. Okay, where people are covering their ears and that kind of thing.
My.
So yes, so little pauses. I would just say you just kind of keep going. Doesn't mean you have to rush through it, but you just pick up where you left off and
Shake it off.
keep powering on.
Yeah.
Stuff's gonna happen.
That's right. So do you take, out of curiosity, you mentioned interactions and questions and such. Do you take questions as they come? How do you want people to save them to the end?
So I will kind of do it where the end of each section. So we have a tax section, then we have more of a kind of market volatility section, then we have a planning section. So the end of the taxes, I'll kind of go through and say, hey, does anybody have any questions about the tax strategies? Are we thinking about implementing into your own plan? And usually we kind of break it up, let people answer questions or ask questions. So I have no problem with that. Kind of do it at the end.
Do you ever do if there's no questions? Do you ever say like, normally we get a lot of clients that'll come in and ask about blank.
Yep.
You do things like that?
Yep. No, it's great. So the crowd's always going to be different. So sometimes you can have very responsiveness, and then you go, nope, no questions there at all. Usually I can get somebody to poke in or throw a question out there, but I've done it where it's, hey, if I was sitting in your chair, I'd be asking about this, and refer back to whatever you want to talk about a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful thing to do, is the question you should be asking, and then that just, this is what you should have been, this is what I really want to talk about, this is what you should be asking. So we get to the end.
Yes.
Good night. God bless. You've taken questions. Do you limit how many questions? Is there a spot where you finally, maybe you cut it off?
So I'm always looking at my time. My goal is 50 minutes. Sometimes it's a couple minutes past. Sometimes it's even a little bit earlier. Not usual though. So usually once you get up there, you can kind of talk for a while. And but yeah, the questions is going to be if it's really going further. That's a great opportunity to go. Hey, I will come around. I'll ask to each one of you, answer all of your questions, book an appointment, is really where we're going with that. So then I'll say, hey, we got to get to dinner, but I'll come around individually.
How do you collect how are you collecting those sheets to make sure that you get them back?
Yeah, I mean, so I let people know through the event that we are going to be picking them up, and just do it in a way that, we're going, hey, we want to know who you are and what your goals and concerns are. This allows us to help understand why you're here and what you're looking for. So we kind of premise it through the event. My closing is always going to be we're picking up those response sheets on the very bottom. We made days, times, ways to meet with us. We want to make it as easy as possible and basically just say, hey, pick one of those days, save a half an hour of time. Let's see if we're a fit.
I like it.
Yep.
So you get to, I was going to ask you a question, but as I'm thinking through your process and with the meal coming, so the Q&A, no one's getting up to like form a line to talk to you. They're staying in place.
Yeah.
So food comes out. What are you doing? Are you sticking around or are you out?
Always sticking around. So that's where myself and my managing partner are going to go around. We usually give it, 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes to just let everybody settle in. And we'll just, even if they're eating salads and starting on food or whatever the case, we'll go around and just say, hey, do we have any questions at all, anything specific? And whatever that answer is, we're referring to the response sheet. picking it up. And sometimes it's very simple. They've got Wednesday checked, they got afternoon checked, and they got office checked. And I go, great. And I go around with an iPad and I go, Wednesday the 15th, 1 o'clock, sound good?
Oh, so you're using tech right there. Is your managing partner doing the same thing?
Yes.
So he's got an iPad and it's tied into your CRM or your joint calendar.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Odd question for you.
Yeah.
So I'm a taller guy. And so if I walked around and people were eating, I feel like for me, because I'm over 6'4", I feel like the dynamic, like I would be, because they're sitting and they've got a salad and I'm like standing over them.
Yep.
Do you pull up a chair or you kind of hunch down or what do you do?
So that's a great question, and it's hard. You have to kind of feel out what that, body language and comfortability is.
Yeah.
I've gotten on a knee before, if that feels like it makes the most sense. But it has to work with pulling up a chair or whatever works easiest for you. At the end of the day, I figure this: if they've got questions and they want to talk to you, even if they got food in their on their plate, then you're in the right spot. You're where you're supposed to be.
I think I'd probably, I wouldn't squat because then my knees would crunch when I stood back up.
Fair.
I would probably take a knee. I think that I'm just thinking through what I would do because otherwise I would feel like would feel awkward. But that's an interesting thing. It's these little deals, right?
Well, yeah, and I mean, if you have somebody else that can help you, I mean, so there's multiple ways of doing it, but the goal from that at the end of the day is, just chatting with people, getting to know them, and walking away with appointments on the calendar.
Okay, so sheets are collected, appointments are set. Good night, God bless, adios. Next day, what's going to happen in your office?
So every data entry, okay? So that's the, I guess, not fun part of it. So if you've got, assistants or helpers, that's probably where they're shining through. But we want to send out texts, emails, virtual appointment links, anything like that, literally the next day or two.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. So when do you all huddle up that evening? So your wife is registration table. She's watching. What kind of notes or intel are you having her gather?
Yeah, so I mean, I always like making sure that she's looking for the most engaged people. So it's amazing. You can be in front of a room sometimes, and she goes, "That guy over there definitely wants to do something." And I go, "Oh, I thought it was this guy over here." So, and maybe it's both, but it gives one more set of eyes on the crowd, who's engaged, who's asking questions, while we can stay in performance mode, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
And then it's just when it comes to the huddle up after, it's also notes on myself where this section was really great. We lagged through this section, or we got to clean these different pieces up. So always trying to improve on the presentation, the information, and how it's delivered.
Do you have the? So we had somebody in here, and they had the person that was doing the registration. They had I guess for lack of better words, they had the room gridded out so that they could say, table 4, seat 2, so that you would know who I was talking about, and they would say, do you guys get that detail, or is your wife writing like orange sweater guy?
It's kind of funny that you asked that because we both worked in service industry and restaurants before. So yeah, we got the table numbers down.
Nice.
We do it by seat. Yep. But if that's doesn't get hit exactly, we just kind of really chat through it. So we're relaxed, isn't absolutely necessary. But if we're trying to talk about somebody specifically, or shouldn't say talk about them, but refer to somebody or that they were asking questions, then we will essentially assign that table number and seat number. So
I think that's brilliant because the perspective that you have from the front of the room versus the perspective that she has from the back of the room. And then you've also got the perspective of you view things a certain way, she views things a certain way. The fact that you're in the service industry is great because your people skills, your observation would be fantastic. But to be able to map that out and then have that discussion of when you said this, I noticed that they blah, 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 or she leaned in to talk to her husband at that point. So I think that those notes, I mean, gosh, we put so much money into these things, the investment that you're putting in. What's the process for, I said it like a Canadian right there, what's the process for non-appointment setting people?
So we really push and kind of find out if it's worth following up with that person or not. So not to I kind of bluntly will say, look, I don't want to call you, Nick, 10 times over the next month or two.
Mm-hmm.
Is there half an hour of time that we can talk for a little bit, even if it's we'll go through virtual or office or trying to get them on the best ways. We'll try and set up a call. Usually we can pin somebody in if they are absolutely no. Then we collect the response sheet and we'll follow up with them in a month or so. But sometimes you gotta take it for what it is. You're not gonna get 100%.
So what you just said, that's happening at the event, though.
Yes.
Okay, so you're like trying to like, hey, you're not leaving this room. One of us, but you're not letting it off easy. You're looking for that time.
We are looking to set appointments at the event, so we don't want to create a scene. Okay, we don't want to go too far, right? But I think if it's done in a relaxed and professional way, in the sense of like, hey, we just bought you dinner, we just gave you a lot of information, like there's nothing we can talk about for 30 minutes, So we are trying to kind of push that into a specific time, but you got to kind of feel it out. If it's a no, or they're traveling for forever, or they have no idea, then okay, you let that one go. You can always follow up because you have a response sheet.
Yeah. I think that's great to hear, and I think that's great for a lot of people to hear. We're not in this for charity work, unless you're in this for charity work, which you're not in this for charity work. You're here to provide a service and get paid for that service. And I think people a lot of times advisors are too soft.
I make people tell me no 3 times.
Yeah.
That's my rule. Okay, I said, they go, no, I'm traveling next week. Okay, great. When do you come back? When are you traveling? And try and pin it down. So they have to tell me no 3 times before I go. Okay.
We talk to advisors a lot, and I've talked to advisors a lot, and God, I probably did this too when I was an advisor, is being too soft on that, being too much the nice guy. And the fact is that we return on investment here, and sometimes we have to be uncomfortable to be successful. I mean, otherwise you're not growing in that. But I love that. I thought maybe you guys were doing that down the road over a 12-month process, but you're like, no. There's give, there's take. I've always told my girls there's no such thing as a free lunch. If you're there for a free lunch, if you're getting a free lunch, there is a trade-off. There's an expectation of, I did this for you and I expect something back. And there's nothing wrong with that. I love that. So say they said no 4 times.
Yep.
That evening.
Yep.
Now what do you do with them the next day? What do you? I would say tickle file, but that's such an antiquated term. No one knows what that means, and it sounds weird. Are you putting them into a long-term?
They still go into. Yep. They still go into. So we use WealthBox as a CRM,
okay.
But whatever the CRM is, they go in. We schedule kind of follow-up calls, and I mean, to be fair, it'll be less frequent and less frequent. We do somewhat have a mentality where we push a little harder at the event.
Yep.
So if someone's telling us no that many times and they're not interested and they just won't answer the phone and you leave, we're only going to spend so many time on the people that want nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. What you said there about the 3 times going for the no and pushing harder there. For anybody listening to any of these, that maybe is some of the best advice that you can get right there. Is you got to 3 times no.
Yep.
Don't be a jerk about it, but like, hey, I just bought you a steak and I just educated you.
Yeah.
Let's talk. You don't have 30 minutes? Come on, man. Okay, so we're going to land this plane then. As you think about this process now, as you've done it, if you could go back to your very first one, what would be something? What's something along the way that maybe you thought was going to be a big deal wasn't a big deal, and something that you thought wasn't a big deal that's a big deal?
So, I've done other events in the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe first off, I use name tags, I use projectors.
Yeah.
It was quite a bit different than how we're doing it today. So I would just say find what works for, your own personality and, your own business. But one of the big things, I guess, that would be kind of unexpected is that, to me, it has to be We want to be very relaxed. We don't want to, there's kind of a mentality to build it up into some giant event. We want to just be very authentic. We want to say, hey, look, we're buying you dinner. We're educating you on this. But, if we start at 6:05, that's okay. The server needs 5 more minutes, that's okay. If lightning strikes, that's okay. So we try and just make sure that we're relaxed about it. We're not going to freak out about anything. We want to be authentic with people, and I think that shines through when we're trying to get butts and seats and appointments at the end of the day.
I like it. I think the 2 takeaways then for anybody that's listened to this episode, 2 takeaways. 1, be authentic. And then 2, when you're there and you spent the money and they're at the event, by God, ask them for the appointment, and then ask them again, and then ask them one more time.
Yeah.
I like it. All right, Josh, thank you so much seriously, thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
I think this was a fantastic episode. And then we have other stuff to talk about next time you're out. I've got more I got a whole stack of topics I want to talk to you about. But with that being said, for everybody out there, I'd ask that if you get a chance, like, subscribe, follow the show. But really what I'd really like to ask you is drop some comments in. Shoot me an email, drop some comments. Anything you want to see the show cover, anything you think we're doing good, anything you think we're doing bad. I love comments. But shoot them in there. Let me know. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode.